Hello again, Alex here from Betteryears.com. I am very excited because today I'm able to speak to Dr. Asatar Bair about meditation. He is the guru, the course leader, the instructor of Meditation2.0.com. I reached out to Dr. Bair because I wanted to know, and I want everyone else to know, how meditation affects your brain's health and your overall happiness. So we talk about meditation in relation to stress, in relation to productivity, and in relation to overall quality of life. So he gives his tips, his tricks, his routines, and everything that he recommends that you do to incorporate meditation in your life to have an overall higher quality of life and better health. So enjoy. Being in the state of super consciousness, meditating specifically for stress. Can you kind of dive in a little deeper on how the process of meditation can kind of unwind your brain or clarify anything or make dealing with the everyday problems of life easier?
Yeah, I think that the things that are stressful for us on a mental level are the problems for which there is no obvious solution. If there was an obvious solution, it's like, usually we don't find that stressful. It's usually like the uncertainty, the ambiguity, the not knowing, it's just the problem you don't have a solution for. And a lot of times the solution is found deeper. It's like your unconscious has to work on it, right? Your unconscious mind is much more powerful than your conscious mind. And that's where these aha moments come from, right? A lot of times you have to take your mind off of whatever you're doing. You take a break. I mean, there's so many great scientists or inventors, artists who have this moment when they're, maybe they're out in nature, they've gone hiking or whatever, and that's when the breakthrough comes, because you have to kind of shift it's like you have to release the problem for a moment in order to find the solution. And, when you talk about, the kind of tapping into the super consciousness, it's like, you're tapping into the bigger part of your intelligence. And, on an even deeper level, it's like, well, that is where your connection with all of life comes in. So, not just the experiences that you've had, but, the collective intelligence or the collective unconscious, in the words of Carl Jung, we all have this repository of symbols and signs and meanings that goes way beyond our own life experience, and so you find yourself tapping into that wisdom, which is much greater and more ancient than what each one of us possesses. So I think that having that bigger frame to go to really helps in terms of stress, because then you feel like, well, it's not all on me. There is there's wisdom and inspiration that can come through me, and I have to just kind of let that happen.
Got it. So being able to focus instead on things that maybe are out of your control, being able to focus inwards on things as simple as breathing and a sound or someone's voice can
Yes.
allow your brain to relax and maybe become more in tune. So I personally, I do not meditate. I'm not someone who has the ability to sit down and meditate for 20 or 30 minutes, but I do practice breathing exercises. I do try to stop myself at stressful times in the day and do some breathing exercises that I found very helpful. Just being able to focus on breathing, I think that is at least a step one, at least a very, very small step one. So with our listeners that may be having trouble during their day, where their mind becomes cluttered and there's too much to kind of take in and absorb and calculate and organize at once, do you have any tips for those types of people to kind of stop themselves through their day and just do something very small just to kind of reset and focus?
Absolutely.
A small meditative exercise?
Absolutely. Now I like what you said, because it was like when things get stressful, you take a breath. Now that's a great exercise. Because a lot of times what happens is the stress interrupts our breathing, and then our breathing becomes it's in a dysfunctional pattern. Like I've talked about this in some of my videos. There are patterns of breathing which are dysfunctional, and a lot of times stress triggers those. And so here's what I mean by dysfunctional. What I mean is that there's a condition known as hypocapnia, and it occurs when your breath is rapid or arrhythmic, and it refers to a imbalance in your blood chemistry. So you can actually measure the pH of your blood is at the wrong level to effectively take in and metabolize oxygen. Mm-hmm. And it leads to a condition called hypoxia, which means that your tissues, even though there is oxygen in your blood, your tissues cannot take in the oxygen. And so you end up with your muscle tissue, and you see it especially in the brain. The brain has much less oxygen, and it functions much more poorly. So taking a couple of breaths, resetting your breathing, that can be incredibly important so that you disrupt this pattern. Now, it may take more than that to fully dislodge it, but anything that you can do is going to be helpful. So I would say if you can just stop, close your eyes, take 3 deep breaths, then you're gonna feel much better afterwards. I think you'll feel a lot less stressed. Another technique I teach this in my course is just simply take your hand and place it on your chest. And what this does is it kind of lowers a lot of times when we get stressed, we have a lot of tension in our heads, right? The muscles of our face are tense, and our jaw and all this stuff. By putting your hand on the muscular tension down, and you bring your focus, it's a spatial thing, but it's also like, okay, let's go down into the unconscious where you have a lot more resources to draw on, like I mentioned before, your unconscious mind. And then sometimes we even go further with that, place one hand on the chest and one hand on the belly, and take a few breaths. And again, this has an even more powerful effect of bringing your consciousness down into your body, being able to release that tension and stress.
Okay, so on a neurological level, on a simple brain health and energy level, that breathing exercise allows your blood to collect more oxygen, distribute more oxygen into your brain tissue, giving your brain cells and your body a lot more energy, and allowing you to take control of your work a lot easier, a lot faster, a lot more clarity, a lot more focus. Simultaneously focusing on that breathing allows you to maybe take some of that mental strain off of whatever's going on, and just focus on something as simple as breathing.
Yes. And there is one, so I've given like kind of 3 different things so far, right? There's one that is for cases of real acute stress.
Okay.
Right? When you just really, it's like, you're really like, kind of, you hit your limit. And that's, you take a deep breath in and you just hold it, mm-hmm. right? This is like when you just feel like you're at your wit's end, right? Just you hold your breath, right? Holding your breath is holding your life force on a very fundamental level, and it has this effect of resetting your nervous system. And it also is very beneficial for that blood chemistry point that I mentioned. It nudges the blood CO2 level back towards the appropriate level for you to metabolize oxygen. So, in the cases of like, where stress moves into kind of panic attack, then, you just hold your breath briefly, right? 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. And then you begin to, it resets your breathing. You take a couple of deep breaths and you feel much better.
Yeah, and I've been practicing, I'm not sure where I found it, but the simple exercise of breathing in for 4 seconds, holding it for 8 seconds, and then exhaling for 12 seconds, I believe. I'm doing that, 10 or 15 times, just focusing on just counting. I found that to be very relaxing.
Excellent. That comes from the yoga tradition, yeah. And, it's one of these basic exercises in concentrating on your breath and giving your mind something to do so that your mind stays focused on the activity at hand, right, which is your breathing. And that's a complex enough pattern so that it's not, when you get good at it, your mind might wander, but initially it's like you got to stay focused on that so that you actually do it, right? And like, okay, now I screwed up, right? I've got to go back to doing my count.
Yeah, and okay, that builds on our next topic, which is happiness and meditation. So we talked about how meditation can relieve stress and increase productivity. Both of those things, I know when I'm less stressed and more productive, I'm happier. But as far as meditation and happiness on a long term, on a continual basis, I guess the best questions to ask are what type of meditation routine would you say is prescribed or recommended for someone in a stressful time in their life to become more at ease and have a happier, more fulfilled life? What would you prescribe to those types of people?
Well, meditation helps in a very basic way with happiness because, I also have to say it kind of depends on where you are in your life, For example, a big part of our development, just as human beings, is forming ourselves as separate selves, right? As egos. We have to create our ego. Who am I, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a question that occupies us for, a good part of our life, like maybe a few decades, right? You go through childhood, you figure out, through all these experiences, you figure out who you are. And one of the big ways that we figure out who we are is what we're able to accomplish, right? So, bringing it back to productivity, right? What are we working on? What are we accomplishing? And a lot of this is through the power of focusing your mind, and especially focusing your mind over time, right? Most of us can focus for, a few minutes or whatever, right? But can you stick with a project over time? That's where you succeed, right? Or don't succeed alternately, right? So, what are you able to accomplish? And a lot of, as we go through life, we finish school, we have a job, we advance in that career. All of this is like lessons in concentration, right? Mm-hmm. And so meditation can help with that a lot because it's like I said, it's fundamental exercises in concentration. The one that you mentioned is a good example, counting along with your breath, right? You have very little external stuff, right? I mean, there's nothing to see, you're not doing anything, it's just focusing on your breath and counting, right? Mm-hmm. Fundamental exercise and concentration, and there's a lot of those in the different meditative traditions that come from yoga or Sufism or, there are many different kinds of Buddhism, lots of different kinds of meditation. They all have exercises like that. But then when we we move on to another phase in our life, and this, the answer, like who am I, the development of the self or the ego has been completed in a sense. We kind of know who we are, right? And then we're like, well, is there more? I've done a few things, been successful, but it doesn't seem to be kind of enough, and so a lot of people go through a kind of a crisis, an inner crisis, and then it's like you have to kind of discover this second kind of phase where you're more interested in how are we all connected, and that becomes the growing edge, right? And it's like, oh, okay, I feel this, I experience this, and that's like many other people, like everybody goes through the same emotions that I'm feeling, and we are all connected, and if somebody feels a certain way and I walk into the room, I'm going to pick up on that, right? I mean, what's the explanation for that, right? I mean, well, because we're all connected on some level. And so then you explore those connections. And again, meditation is a great way to do that because, you by focusing on other people, by focusing on what is your influence in the world, what kind of energies are you taking in from those around you, and what kind are you putting out there, right? So then you study how are we connected. Now, where this all comes back to happiness is a lot of times the roots of our unhappiness is where we do not feel connected, right? We feel alone. We feel like we don't matter. We don't understand the meaning or the purpose. Now, particularly when all that we've been focused on is ourselves, right? We've been focusing on, I've said this is a very important stage, developing the ego. But at a certain point, you're going to become dissatisfied with that and want to know what else is there, right? And so then you kind of have to move on, right? If you don't move on, if you don't explore further dimensions of yourself, you're not going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people kind of get stuck. This is the problem of the, the high-achieving person, right? So it's like you have to have achieved enough to have developed your ego. The person who hasn't gotten to that, I'm not going to say to them, explore the connection. I'm going to say, do well at your job, right? Focus. Do achieve the things that matter to you. That's going to make the biggest difference in terms of your happiness. So it's important to notice, like, well, where is a person coming from in their life when they're approaching meditation?
Okay. So what I got from that is, in a sense, meditation can give you more control over that ego, or more, obviously become more in touch with that ego. But in a sense, I mean, what you're really trying to do is gain more control over that ego, over that self, and over your life in general. The more control you have, the more in tune you are, the more in touch you are with everything going on, with work, with family, with yourself. Meditation kind of can bring all that together and allow you to be less stressed, more productive, happier, more in touch with others and with yourself and with everything kind of going on. Would you say that's
yes,
correct?
Although there is a point where control reaches sort of its limit.
Okay.
And then you move into, what the classic spiritual teachings talk about, which is, this more of like, you kind of let go of the control and say, what else is there, right? What comes through me when I'm open, or what is there to me that is more than just what I know about myself, And so there's a lot of interesting practices, a lot of these are for when you're ready for it, right? But like, well, what happens after you die, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a huge area of focus in meditation. Now, that's obviously not something you have control over,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's something that you explore because you want a full understanding of who you really are, right? And that's where happiness comes from. Happiness comes from really knowing who you are. It doesn't come from, the external things, right? It comes from the internal. So, when we talk about control, I always try to emphasize what is the appropriate thing to control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is yourself. Right? You can never have too much self-control.
Yep. Okay.
If you put your control onto external objects, then you give life an opportunity to disappoint you. Right?
Yeah.
If you focus within, then you that's something you always have.
Yeah, and I guess kind of an illusion of control would be probably a better way to discuss control, but kind of having control over the little things in your life, just waking up in the morning, having a routine, just things as simple as making your bed in the morning. Just people talk about just the act of making your bed being the first accomplished step in your day. That can have wondrous impacts on your entire day and your feeling
it sets you off on the right path.
Exactly. It's kind of your feeling of organization and kind of control over chaos that's happening around you. If your office is a mess, clean up your workspace. You feel like you have a little bit more control over what's going on in your workspace, I guess. So the feeling of control, the illusion of control, and the things that you are not in control over, other people, death, things that may come up. That's something that meditation can kind of help you understand and let go of, and not feel like you need to control. Would that be a better way of
I think that's
talking
true.
about it? Okay. And for you personally, Dr. Bair, with meditation, you said you started young, so I do have a question about going back, and if you could start meditating sooner, that may not be a relevant question anymore since you did start so young. But with I guess if that's not a relevant question for you, maybe talk about what you would recommend others to do. Is there a time in life where you suggest starting meditation? Is there kind of a curve there that you suggest getting going and moving?
I think
moving
it's
forward towards?
like any kind of discipline. It's like you pick it up because you feel a call, you know? It's like, what makes somebody start exercising? I mean, meditation is much the same thing, you know? And what helps you maintain that, you know? I don't think it's because other people tell you it's a good idea, you know? It's just not strong enough. It's like there's so many things you could do to improve yourself, right? I mean, it's like, why do that one, you know? You have to feel like, for yourself, you have to feel like, yes, that is the thing that I want, right? And then you have to get some feedback from it where you have the sense like, oh, okay, you know, this is working, or, you know, or I'm enjoying it, right? I mean, and so you notice this with people who stick with exercise. It's like, well, these are people who enjoy exercise. You know, they found a thing to do that seems to work for them and that they enjoy, and that is vital with meditation too. You know, meditation, it's like you're closing down a lot of your external senses. You know, you're closing your eyes, you're being still. So, you know, the question is like, well, what happens within you that gives you that positive feedback that makes you feel like, okay, this is going the right direction. It's doing something for me. I'm enjoying it. And so the form of meditation that I practice and teach myself, it's all about tuning into your heartbeat and breathing in tune with your heartbeat. And so one of the things that I personally notice as a feedback mechanism for that is that it makes your breath very rhythmic, right? And that makes your thoughts rhythmic. So I think this is part of the reason why I feel much calmer afterwards. I feel like, you know what, my thoughts and even my feelings have this kind of rising and falling that goes with the breath. And so, you know, if I sit down for 30 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever, I feel like I'm in a different kind of a time, you know, like time doesn't pass in the same way. So, you know, if we're talking about advice for someone who's just getting started, you know, I would say, well, think about what do you want from it, you know? Is your intention to relax, to fight stress? An exercise like what I mentioned, focusing on your breath, is very good for that. But start with 3 minutes, right? Start with something that's doable, and see how it goes for you. Maybe listen to a recording that can help, you know, keep you on track. And then you see, okay, what am I getting from this? And is it something then that I want to continue? That's kind of, you know, an important thing, right? It's a self-education process. You don't want to be listening to other people, right? That's not really what meditation is about. It's about listening to yourself. So, you know, if your teacher is giving you stuff that's helping you, you know, feel more connected within, that's great, right? If not, then, you know, maybe that's not the right teacher for you, right?
Okay, perfect. I mean, that's a great explanation. And obviously, there is the practice of mindfulness too. That's you can have a mindfulness meditation session, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but mindfulness is more of kind of an outlook and awareness. You know, being aware of why things are occurring and what may be causing certain things to occur, people to act a certain way. It doesn't have anything to do with you, and making sure that you are mindful of those things and react accordingly and internalize things accordingly and make the right assumptions. So I would say, yes, I mean, if you aren't actively meditating, at the very least, be actively mindful, and start with that. Maybe at a young age, you can kind of start practicing being more mindful.
Mindfulness is a couple of things, and it gets a little confusing because, you know, the same word is used to describe a number of different things. You know, it's a basic kind of meditation from the Buddhist tradition. It's called Vipassana, and so it's like, okay, sometimes people mean that technique. You know, they mean like practicing that technique, but it also is meant as a kind of an attitude. You know, and one meaning of that is to say like be mindful, right? And that means something like do one thing at a time, or, you know, when you're doing something, really do it, really focus on it, right? I mean, that is a meaning of mindful. Another meaning of it is, be accepting of what is happening now. Like the classic is to just say, be here now, right? And don't focus so much on the things that you want to change, but just notice, like, what is, right? So that's another kind of fundamental attitude, in Buddhism. And another part of it is don't identify so much with it, right? I mean, a lot of times what limits our happiness is we say, oh my God, I feel really angry, but I'm not an angry person. What's wrong with me? I've got to stop feeling angry, And then it's like, instead of just being with what is, we're fighting it so hard, and by fighting it, we're staying trapped in it, Like if we could just say, God, I'm so angry, right? If we could just let it flow and be fine with that, you know what? Pretty soon we wouldn't be angry, right? I mean, because that's just how feelings go, they flow through you. If you fight against it and say, no, I've got to think differently, I'm not angry, then you suppress it and, you stay angry a lot longer. So I think mindfulness means all of those things. And then it's kind of confusing for people because it's like, well, what aspect, like you hear all those different things and you're like, what do I do?
Yeah. And we wrote a little bit about mindfulness and had another article from someone in San Diego that is behind Mindfulness.com, and I think he puts it in a very good way. And it is sort of a constant meditative practice. I mean, it's something that you kind of take with you throughout life. I mean, you should, and it would make you a lot happier and a lot more content, a lot more obviously in control, at least of your feelings and reactions and outlook and expectations and all the things that of yourself. You should have more control over your self-control, and I like that a lot. I mean, I think like you said, happiness, a lot of it has to do with just how you perceive and how you kind of take things in and how you digest and resolve issues internally. And it's just kind of something that only you can do and practice and become better at. Practicing meditation, all the exercises that we talked about, very, very important, very, very crucial, especially if you're reaching a time in your life where you become highly strung and highly stressed and feeling like you're not able to bear, everyday life. Start taking up a practice of meditation and start kind of regrouping your thoughts and bringing everything back to center and some of the things that you teach on your site here and the courses that you offer can really help people out. So we'll definitely link those and mention those in the notes here on the article page. But before we leave you here, Dr. Bair, do you have any, what I like to ask, books, obviously, book recommendations, but also for our more technologically focused people or busier people, do you have an app that you recommend for meditation? So a book and an app that you would recommend. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I did when I was working for a nonprofit, we started a publishing arm of that nonprofit, and so we were able to publish several books, and one of them, which I was able to edit, is called Living from the Heart, and that's really a great book on meditation, and it gives you, some of the background, and then it gives you a whole bunch of different techniques, and they build on the other. So that's a great book for those who like reading. For those who are more technologically inclined, what I did with my own site is to try to create an introductory level course that would be very easy, that would be very mobile friendly, so that you could take a course that built progressively day by day. So this is a 28-day long course, but it allows you to make a little bit of progress each day through video and audio content. You have a little reading, you have a couple of assignments to do during the day, stuff to think about and stuff to practice out to learn a little bit more about meditation. And that's called the Meditation Basics course. So your readers and viewers might be interested in that as well.
Yeah, and I have it pulled up here on the screen. Okay, so that book again, Living from the Heart?
Living from the Heart, Start rhythm meditation.
Just to make sure I have the right one here, is what would the author or the publisher be?
Karan and Susanna Bair are the authors.
Okay.
That's Puranbair. You can find that on Amazon.
Okay. I pulled
got
it
the
up.
cover that has 4 different things on it. It's got like water, fire,
Yep.
and air.
I have it right here. Perfect paperback right here. Great reviews. Wow, great reviews. Okay, perfect. So I'll link that page as well in the show notes here. And are you a fan of any meditation apps? Any mobile apps that you use to kind of do a quick meditation session, or are you?
For myself, I'm afraid I don't use that sort of thing. I got into it before the mobile revolution. So, I'm interested in the development of it, and I try to keep pace with what's happening. But I there's just certain things, that I'm not going to be the best person to, because I haven't gotten into it that way myself. I think you have to kind of be honest about.
No problem. Okay, Dr. Bair. One thing I like to ask is about your personal routine. So if you could kind of give us your daily routine that maybe kind of gets you going, gets you started, gets you energized, gets you focused. What do you do on a daily, or try to do, I guess, on a daily basis to really make sure you have the best, most productive, stress-free day?
Well, I like to get up early, so I usually get up around 5 or 5:30, and then I'll start with a couple of light exercises. The other thing I've done, so I'll do some push-ups, some squats, just body weight stuff, and then sometimes I'll do some qigong, some tai chi. That's another thing that I've studied. Maybe a little bit of yoga, and then I will do my seated meditation practice, and that lasts for 30 to 60 minutes. It depends a little bit on the day. I will go longer on the weekend and shorter during the week. It depends on how much time I have, but that's how I start the day. And then, I'm a big believer in walking places. I also teach a kind of a meditation that goes along with walking. This is another kind of ancient form of meditation.
Very cool.
Meditation. And that's a good one because, all of us, do some walking during our day, right? And that's a way for you to kind of get in your breath in rhythm, while you're getting from point A to point B. And then I will often do some meditation in the evening before going to sleep. My particular approach to meditation is that you sit with a very upright posture. So I don't do the meditation lying down. Some other practices do that. I like to really develop my breath and breathe very deeply and fully. So those are some of the aspects of my own just personal daily practice that I've found to be most helpful. I really like to have that meditation session first thing in the morning. That helps me the most.
Gotcha. So a little bit of exercise, a couple rounds of meditation, walking meditation, and sitting meditation. Gotcha. Okay. Well, Dr. Asatar, it's been a pleasure, and we are very excited to have this out there for everyone to hear and see and gain from. I think we talked a lot about what meditation can do for our audience, and I believe a lot of the points that we made are going to be very, very helpful to a lot of people. So thank you very much for that. That was very, very, very great. Very great to have you. And personally, I'm excited to kind of dig in here and find out more and see if I can begin my own meditative practices. But
well, great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's great to talk to you, Alex.
Yeah, very nice. I'll reach out to you via email and reply if you could. I'm going to send you a couple questions to kind of reiterate some of the points that you made that I wasn't too sure about, and link some stuff for our audience. If they want to read, they can go ahead and follow those links and learn more about it.
Great.
All right.
Well, look forward to further communication.
Thank you, Dr. Bair. Bye.
All right. Take care.